Welcome to Timeless Religious Stories, where faith, struggle, and divine moments come to life. New stories shared daily.
I remember the light turning red. That's where it started, or maybe, ended. It was an ordinary Tuesday in early October. The kind where the trees in Pennsylvania look like they're burning in silence, crimson, gold, dying beauty. I had just dropped off my son, Daniel, at his high school and was headed to work at the dental clinic in Harrisburg. Same route I'd taken for 11 years. Same stoplight at 3rd and Main, where the old church stands, forgotten and locked since the pandemic. I remember checking the mirror. My hair looked tired. My eyes, worse. No makeup that day. No real sleep either. There was a strange weight in my chest, like a sadness with no name, just quietly expanding over weeks. I told myself it was just the season. Just hormones. Just life. And then, it happened. It didn't feel like dying. Not at first. There was a ringing in my ears, like pressure underwater. Then a sharp twist in my skull, as if someone reached in and turned a key behind my eyes. My arms went numb. My foot slid off the brake. My vision blurred, and then, nothing. But I was still there. That's the part that won't make sense, I know. But listen to me. I didn't black out. I left. It was like my mind cracked open and slipped through the back of my head into something enormous. Familiar. A silence that wasn't empty, but alive, like being watched by something too ancient to have a name. I saw my body slumped forward in the driver's seat. My mouth was slightly open. The car had gently rolled into the crosswalk. A man in a baseball cap ran toward me, shouting. I floated above it, detached, but aware. I should have been afraid. But I wasn't. Not at all. Because there was something behind me. Something calling. At first it felt like a memory. Like a childhood dream I had forgotten, suddenly rushing back with impossible clarity. A warm vibration in the air, like a low note on a cello that never ends. The light around me began to shift, no longer streetlights and sunlight but something purer, clearer, like the space between lightning and thunder. And then I heard it. My name. Not audibly. Deeper than that. The way a tree might hear wind calling it by name. Anna. That was when I turned around. What I saw. I don't have words for it, not really. But I'll try. Because you need to understand that this wasn't just a hallucination, or a dream, or neurons misfiring. It was more real than anything in this world. Too real. As if everything else I'd ever known was a shadow of this one moment. There was a figure. Radiant, but not blinding. Solid, yet made of light. His face shifted, not in a chaotic way, but in a way that felt like truth trying to show itself through limited eyes. Eyes like oceans that had seen the first sunrise. Hands that held time itself. He didn't need to introduce himself. I knew. It was him. Jesus. But not the Sunday school painting. Not the gentle shepherd with a lamb. This was someone who had seen galaxies born and die. Someone who carried both infinite mercy and unshakable authority in the same breath. I wanted to fall. I wanted to speak. I wanted to hide and never leave all at once. And then he said, in that deep silent way. Do you want to see what they do not see? I didn't answer. Because my soul already had. He didn't move, yet everything around him did. The moment he spoke, do you want to see what they do not see? The light around us began to ripple, like fabric being pulled in a breeze I could not feel. The world itself seemed to fold open, like pages turning in a book I had never realized I was living in. I said nothing. I couldn't. But he knew. He looked at me, not with eyes, but with knowing. And with that, something shifted in the space between us. The light tore. Not violently. Not like a ripping sound. It was more like reality itself sighed and opened its palm. And I saw. We were standing, no, hovering, above what looked like Earth, but, not quite. It was Earth as it truly was, not the physical globe I knew from maps and weather reports, but a soul map of the planet. The cities pulsed with light, but not golden or warm. They flickered in cold, artificial hues, neon pinks, sterile blues, dim gray static. Like veins full of counterfeit electricity. I saw people walking, millions of them, but they didn't look like people. Not at first. Some were transparent, like glass containers, empty. Others were filled with writhing shadows that didn't belong to them. And some had a dull glow, as if something ancient and small was still alive inside. Barely. They were all looking down. Eyes fixed on glowing rectangles in their hands. Screens. Phones. No one looked up. No one looked at each other. Their souls were being siphoned, bit by bit, not violently, but through consent. I turned to him. He hadn't taken his eyes off the scene. They gave away their gaze, he said. And with it, they surrendered their will. I saw places where the darkness was so thick, it moved like oil. It clung to neighborhoods. Hovered over schools. It didn't invade, it was invited. There were symbols I didn't understand. Corporate logos that pulsed with strange life. They weren't just brands. They were sigils. Portals. Each glowing emblem opened invisible doors where influence poured in, ideas, moods, addictions. And people wore them on their chests like devotionals. But then I saw the most horrifying thing. Churches. Beautiful buildings, grand architecture. But in the soul map, many were hollow. Some had flickering candles inside. Others were entirely dark. I saw preachers with mouths open wide, but no light coming out. Words were flowing, yes, but not power. Not authority. Some churches had become mirrors, only reflecting the desires of those who entered. One stood out. A massive megachurch on the edge of a city, its soul covered in digital vines. The screen behind the pulpit pulsed like a heartbeat. A man spoke passionately to thousands, but above him, invisible to the crowd, loomed a black figure, featureless, faceless, feeding on the attention below. A parasite dressed in light. I covered my mouth. I wanted to scream. They do not preach the kingdom, he said. They preach the simulation. I felt a rising panic. This wasn't just deception, it was engineering. Entire realities were being manufactured, carefully layered over truth like wallpaper. Enough truth to keep people pacified. Enough beauty to distract them. Enough fear to keep them compliant. And then I saw the split. A deep canyon, invisible to the natural world, now stretching across nations. Not political. Not racial. Not even religious. A spiritual fault line. On one side, those still tethered to a higher voice. Few, but radiant. On the other, those who had merged with the artificial. Their minds were no longer their own. Their choices were illusions. Puppets who didn't know they had strings. I turned to him, trembling. What is this? He looked into me, and I felt grief deeper than I could carry. It is the hour before the storm. There was no ground beneath my feet. And yet, I was descending. It wasn't like falling. It was being pulled, gently, with precision, through layers of a world I'd never known existed. Jesus was beside me, silent now, his presence both a shield and a mirror. As we moved downward, through the veil, I felt time stretch, warp, grown like an old cathedral door opening inward. Below us was a vast expanse. Not hell as I'd imagined it. Not flames. Not screams. This place was organized. Beautiful, even. Glass structures rose like cathedrals made of thought. Shapes that seemed mathematical and alive. An architecture of intellect. It felt sterile, cold, perfect in a terrifying way. I had the feeling that everything here was watched, not for safety, but for control. And then I saw them. The Watchers. They stood beneath the glass. Not human, not angel, not demon, but something in between. Ancient. Designed. Their forms shimmered in and out, like ideas halfway into manifestation. Their eyes were everywhere. Some had no mouths. Others had too many. Each of them held books, scrolls, screens, fragments of history, timelines. They were building patterns, influences, injecting thoughts into the stream of human consciousness like dye into water. They didn't act out of rage. They acted with logic. They moved data, desire, fear, opinion, memory, from one mind to another. Or sometimes, many. Whole movements. Whole ideologies. Engineered not in universities, but here, beneath the glass, where spirits twisted information like sculptors bending light. And then I saw something worse. Children. They were not physically here, but I saw their impressions, their emotional blueprints. The Watchers studied them like seeds. They watched what caught their attention, what made them laugh, what made them look twice. And they adjusted the algorithms accordingly. Entertainment. Music. Beliefs. Identity. Everything was being fed to them. Not taught, programmed. A Watcher turned toward me. I felt its gaze enter through me, piercing every lie I had ever told myself. It spoke without sound. They no longer need to believe. They only need to repeat. I couldn't breathe. Jesus placed a hand near my shoulder, and the fear lifted slightly. But his eyes, those eyes I trusted more than my own soul, were full of sorrow. And then, I saw the mirror. A massive, translucent panel suspended in the space before us. It was filled with images of Earth, but not the Earth I knew. It was a prediction. A rendering. What the Watchers were building. A version of the future they were moving toward with terrifying speed. In this world, people no longer needed governments. Or gods. They were fed. Connected. Immersed. Safe. Happy. But it was a lie. I saw people smile with dead eyes. I saw families together, yet utterly alone. I saw churches turned into theaters of affirmation. The word rewritten in soft fonts. Crosses replaced with prisms. Truth bent into preference. And in the center of this false world stood a figure. Beautiful. Charismatic. Beloved. He looked like a savior. But I knew. My soul screamed. This was not the Christ. This was the one who would replace him. I gasped, falling to my knees in the vision. My voice cracked like dry earth. Why don't they see it? Jesus turned to me, and for the first time, I saw something in him that I hadn't expected. Urgency. Because they look through the glass and see themselves. After the mirror vanished, the silence returned. Not peaceful silence. Heavy. Watching. As if all of heaven held its breath. I stood there, weak, trembling, like something inside me had cracked and was still leaking. I felt exposed. Small. But he was still there beside me, and in his presence, even the despair had meaning. We began to rise. Not up into heaven. But out, away from the glass cities and the Watchers, through layers of subtle light. It was like climbing back through veils, each one thinner than the last, until we emerged into what I can only describe as the in-between. This place felt closer to Earth. I could sense humanity again, not physically, but emotionally, like the echo of billions of souls vibrating through the air. Joy. Confusion. Anger. 1,000 languages humming at once. But one thread ran through it all, almost hidden. A whisper. A song. And then I saw them. Scattered like embers across a dark valley. Some were walking. Some were still. But all of them glowed, softly, quietly, with something I hadn't seen since I left my body. Light. Not the artificial light of cities, or the spiritual counterfeit I had seen in false preachers. This was the old light. The kind that doesn't come from you but passes through you. The kind that remembers Eden. They were farmers. Nurses. Teenagers. Old women in prayer closets. A soldier crying alone in his barracks. A boy in a hoodie reading psalms under flickering streetlight. They weren't loud. They weren't many. But they burned. And the darkness hated them. I saw it, felt it. How the shadows slithered around them, whispering doubt, feeding despair, tempting them to extinguish their own flame. But still, they held on. One of them, a woman, maybe 70, frail, with a spine curved by years of silent prayers, looked up. As if she saw me. Her eyes didn't beg. They didn't fear. They shone. Not with strength. But with surrender. A fierce kind of love that cannot be faked. Jesus turned to me and spoke. These are the ones who listen when the world screams. The ones who wait when others run. The ones who still know my name. I wanted to run to them. Tell them they weren't alone. Tell them the kingdom was closer than they knew. That they weren't crazy for feeling what they felt in their bones. That the pressure, the isolation, the rejection, it wasn't failure. It was proof. Proof that they still carried flame in a world drowning in smoke. And then he said, "It is to them I will return. And through them I will roar." Tears flooded my eyes. I fell to my knees. I realized then, I wasn't being shown all this just to see. I was being called. "You want me to go back?" I whispered. He looked at me. And then nodded. The next words he spoke shook every fiber of who I thought I was. "You will forget some of this. But not all. You will sound strange, even mad. But speak. The hour is later than they know." The in-between began to collapse, folding back into light. A sound, like wings and thunder, filled the space. His face drew close, closer than breath, and he whispered one final thing I have never told anyone out loud. "When they say, peace and progress, watch the sky." I came back with a scream in my lungs. My eyes snapped open in the ambulance. There was shouting. Hands on my chest. Flashing lights. Somewhere in the haze, a paramedic's voice pierced through, "We've got her, she's back. She's breathing." I wasn't. Not really. Because part of me was still there. Still in the veil. Still hearing his voice echoing through the fabric of all things. Still tasting that light. They said I had a seizure. That I blacked out at the wheel for 47 seconds before a pedestrian stopped the car. No crash. No injury. Just gone, and then, suddenly, back. But I wasn't the same. The days that followed were a blur of hospital rooms, tests, worried faces. My husband asked what happened. I couldn't answer him. My pastor visited. I tried to tell him the truth. He smiled politely, the way people smile when they're waiting for you to get better. I did not get better. I got awake. Everywhere I looked, I saw it now, the folded world. The strings behind the smiles. The low hum of deception humming beneath polite conversation. I'd see someone scrolling their phone, laughing, and I could feel it, how deep the tether went. How much of their mind was no longer theirs. I tried to go back to work. I lasted 3 days. By day 4, I was sitting in my car, parked in the church lot across town, the old one no one used anymore. I cried for 2 hours. Not because I was afraid, but because I couldn't unsee. I was burning from the inside. Some nights, I still hear the watchers, like pressure behind my thoughts. I feel them testing the edges of my mind, like fingers pressing against glass. I know now how real the war is. Not with guns or flags, but with attention. With truth. And I know something else. It's almost here. That presence, the false one I saw in the mirror, he's not a concept. He's a countdown. And he's waiting for just one thing, the agreement of a distracted world. Not worship. Just acceptance. A world too tired to resist. I wasn't sent back with a mission to convince everyone. I know that now. I was sent back for the embers. For you. The ones who have always known that something was off, but couldn't name it. The ones who wake up at 3:33 a.m. with the weight of eternity pressing on their ribs. The ones who can't pray like they used to, not because they're cold, but because their soul has grown too large for shallow words. You're not crazy. You're being called. We are the ones who remember the sky. Before the simulation. We are the ones who feel the storm before the first drop falls. We are the ones with oil in hidden lamps. And I tell you this. He is coming back. Not as a whisper. Not as an idea. But as fire. And when he does, every lie will be burned. Every counterfeit exposed. And the glass will shatter. Watch the sky.